Namaste. How are
Namaste.
you? How's your hand now?
Uh, my left collarbone is broken, and my four of my ribs are broken on my left side.
Oh,
And it's been 18 days now since they got broken, so it's still pretty sore.
okay.
Such is life. The spacesuit doesn't bounce as well as it used to.
mm, mm. Suvarna, shall we play that Buddham Sarnam?
Yes,
Yes, I
yes.
will play the Buddham Sharanam and I may mute you so that the echo doesn't come back. But
Okay.
I'll leave it as it is since I don't want you to unmute again. Yeah, I'll leave it as it is.
I'm in your hands, guys.
We are all in the hand of the divine.
Well, that's true too. I see it that way. Everything's happening, and we don't have a great deal of choice, if any.
Namaste, dear friends. Today, again, we have a very special guest, a kinder spirit, Bodhisattva's fellow traveler, Swami Prem Bisrant, in Bhagwan Meeting Place of Friends. Many of you already know him, but let me give a brief introduction about him. Swami Prem Bisrant is from Australia, also known as a Vincent Cooper before his initiation into sannyas. From very early age, he had a deep interest into spirituality. He first met Osho Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh in 1979. He took sannyas in 1983 at the age of 28 and entered into master and disciple relationship. Osho gave him the name Swami Prem Bisrant, meaning restful love. In Osso's presence, Swami Prem Biswant had the profound experience of silence, and his journey for the awakening began. As an ardent seeker, Biswant participated in Osso's Spiritual Mystery School in America in 1984 and in 1985 and in India in 1989. Osso's teaching on surrender and openness brought him to recognize what was not still and relaxed within. In his hometown, Perth, Australia, he opened the Biswant Buddhist Society. Today's Biswant reminds his students that the only way for anyone to raise the consciousness level is through the totality of practice. He also encouraged his students to celebrate life, an attitude which Osso taught. He also asked his students to develop a greater capacity for maturity and self-responsibility as they raise their consciousness level. Swami Biswant, welcome to Bhagwan Meeting Place of Friends and good morning. How are you?
Good morning. As far as how I am, is I actually don't find a great deal of difference from moment to moment. Everything's always pretty much the same.
Wow. Today is also a very auspicious day. Today here in UK and yesterday in Australia, because it's 747 death anniversary of enlightened Sufi mystic Jalaluddin Rumi, Mevlana. So I'll be using some Sufi quotes beginning of each question just to make it more interesting and heartwarming. And reading your story, Biswant, and your journey, it could made in some Hollywood movies, and I'm surprised that Keanu Reeves still have not knocked on your door. To all our viewers, thank you, and if you are watching it, relax, because Biswant means relax. Swami Biswant, let me begin. All was full of beautiful things until old man with beard set my heart with flames with love and made pregnant with longing. Now how can I look all around me when I have to hide the face of my beloved? What was it like growing up in Australia and having keen interest into spirituality from very early age? I'd like to hear about your Satori experience at age 11, your life at a boarding school at 14, and your first encounter group at age 19, and your first meeting with Osso.
Wow, that was an awful lot of questions. I think we better just start with one and see how we proceed from there, because when you ask so many questions, my mind just goes, "Pah." But I had a strong interest in God when I was young. I was born into a Catholic family, and I took it all very seriously. I thought Jesus was God, and there was a Father up in heaven, and I wanted to be a good Catholic so I could go to heaven one day. But at the age of 11, I started to have satoris, and this is very unusual for someone who's a Catholic boarding school boy to start finding themselves as absolutely nothing, anatta, and at the same time not experiencing a somebody present anywhere. I had been taken to the boarding school hospital, and they said, "Oh, you must have hit your head on something." But I hadn't hit my head on anything. I was just experiencing the reality of what we truly are. And so that, so as to not seem insane to everybody else who was around me, I agreed I must have been hit on the head. But boarding school itself, Roman Catholic boarding school back in the 60s, was a pretty rough place to be. The school was full of bullies. The teachers were very brutal. It was a violent way to be brought up, not a pleasant way. You'll need
And
to ask me the questions as we go, because I'm
yes,
not going to retain.
yes. So proceeding from your Catholic boarding school, your first encounter at age 19.
Ah. Well, by the time I was 19, I was already running a street gang in Perth. I was a bikie. I rode a motorcycle and I was hanging out with a gang. I'd become a street person in a way. And I wore the black that gang members wear and the studded belt and the desert boots, black desert boots, and generally speaking was rough. And my girlfriend got involved in an organization called Focal that ran encounter groups. And these encounter groups were 4-day live-in groups where people paid a great deal of money to attend. And my girlfriend had paid $700, I think. And back in those days, you were only earning $100 a week, if that. And so I felt that she'd been ripped off. So I went in as this tough guy to meet these guys that had ripped her off, with every intention of getting the money back off them, no matter how hard it was to get. And they said to me, look, why don't you do the group? Why don't you do this encounter group? And I said, no, I don't want to do the group. I just want the money back. And they said, really? You don't need to pay. You can just do the group. And if you feel like paying at the end of it, if you get something out of it, that'll be fine. And I said, no, I just want the money back. And the guy looked at me. He was wearing a 3-piece suit and I was wearing my biker outlaw outfit. He looked at me and said, are you frightened of something, mate? And of course, as a 19-year-old tough guy, being accused or being questioned around my fear, no, I'm not frightened of anything. And he said, well, why don't you do the group? And I said, okay, I'll do the group. And that was the beginning of my rise in consciousness, because in that group, I was annihilated in encounter therapy, because in the 70s, the early 70s, encounter therapy was full on. It wasn't mild. They actually took you apart. And I was so impressed after 4 days by what these people had done in opening me up that I changed my outfit from a bikie outfit to a 3-piece suit. And I went out selling their group because I was so impressed with what it had done for me. It had actually opened me up. It had given me a new chance of a different way of life. And so it had set me on the path of higher consciousness. And so I was very grateful for that. And I never looked back. I never went back to the gang again. I completely left that group of people and developed another way of living in the world, which was more beautiful.
And you made also in 1979, but you took sannyas in 1983. Can you tell us the story behind that? And what was it like, your first meeting with him?
Well, a friend of mine who I had done Focal with, the groups with that I was talking to you before, because I stayed with Focal for about 8 years. So I did a lot of different groups with them because they also ran business motivation seminars as well as personal growth seminars. And I stayed with them for quite a while. And some of the people I met got into Osho and introduced me to his tapes in it would have been 78 or 79. And I listened to the tapes and I didn't get anything from it. I just thought, there's this funny little Indian man talking about stuff I'm not interested in. And I just let it go. And it was so funny because I became a total lover of Osho later on. But what happened was I was involved in a publishing company, which I'd started when I was 24. And I was running that publishing company, and I got involved with a woman who was quite a dangerous woman. I've always loved dangerous women. And this woman had a husband who she'd left, they'd split up, but her husband was a heroin dealer. And he was a big heroin dealer from New Zealand in Australia, heroin being against the law here. And she and I fell out because I found out that she was using heroin, and I didn't want to be involved with her because she was using heroin. This is in 1979, I think. It's sometime around that, or a little bit later. And she got really, really upset with me because I'd said that I didn't want to be with her while she was using heroin. And so she went back and told her husband that I had somehow assaulted her, which never ever occurred. And he hired two men to break my legs because he thought that I'd hurt his ex-wife. And the local police, who were very good friends of mine, because I used to have the publishing company in Fremantle, which is the port city in Perth, and that I used to hang out with the police officers and buy them lunches and have a drink with them, and we were all good mates. They used to call me Buddha because I used to wear sannyas, and I had the robes and I had the beads, so that my nickname in the police force was Buddha. But I hadn't become a sannyasin at this stage. It was still early days, but I'd been visiting Zorba the Buddha's restaurant in Fremantle. And the sannyasins were friendly. They liked to party. They were good fun. And I enjoyed their company. And so I started to go more and more to Zorbas. And then I decided to do a group with a man called Indavar. It was a weekend group. And it was an amazing group because during this group, I had a vision, and I'm not the sort of guy who has visions. And in this vision, I was looking down a large water pipe, a big round water pipe that you could walk down. It was so big. And at the end of the pipe, as I was looking, there was this little Indian man, and he was calling like this. And I looked at him really closely, and I thought it was Osho, and he was calling. And so I thought, well, I'm going to take sannyas. I'm going to become a sannyasin. I've been called. Let's see where this adventure takes me. Because I was such a straight businessman, a three-piece suit dude, and all of a sudden I'm about to take sannyas. My girlfriend at the time was overseas, and she said to me, because she knew I was hanging out with the sannyasins, she said to me, whatever you do, don't take sannyas. Whatever you do, don't take sannyas. I don't want you to be involved with Osho. I don't want you to be involved in any of that crowd. And I didn't tell her. She was overseas. She came back from overseas, and she'd been on a trip around the world. And I said, how about you and I go overseas again? Why don't we do a round the world trip and I'll pay for it? And she said, yes, I'd love to do that. Little did she know I'd already taken sannyas, but I wasn't wearing the colours or the beads yet. And so we went from Perth to Sydney, and then from Sydney to Auckland. And in Auckland, I put my robes on and I put my beads on, and I said, I've taken sannyas. Well, she was so upset with me because she didn't want to be hanging out with someone wearing red robes, or she wanted to hang out with someone wearing a three-piece suit who was driving a nice sports car or something. And I'd gone kind of hippie on her, I guess. And then we went, but she kind of accepted it in some ways. So she brooded. And then we went from New Zealand to Hawaii, and then from Hawaii to Los Angeles. We went from Los Angeles down to Mexico, and we went to a bullfight. And up until that point, I'd been a meat eater. And we went to this bullfight, and I saw these people torturing this bull to death in a ring, and it just broke my heart. It just changed so much inside of me. And I left Mexico immediately. It took my girlfriend. We went up to Oregon, Portland, Oregon, and went into the hotel. This is in 1984. We ended up in the hotel, which was run by the Rajneesh organization.
Is that the same hotel that was bombed in the Wild Wild Country?
Probably. I only ever went there once. But I got there, and my girlfriend was so upset that I had taken sannyas, and so upset that we were going into a Rajneesh hotel in Oregon, that she actually assaulted me. She slapped me in front of the reception desk, and the girls, the women, the Mars said, "No, you're out of here," and they kicked her out of the hotel. And so, and so I went and found her, and she said, "I don't want to come in here. I don't want to go and see Rajneesh. I want to go back to Perth." So I gave her tickets. I gave her enough money to go anywhere she wanted, and she left. And I went on from there to Antelope, and from Antelope to the ranch. And this is in 1984. And after I was there for 2 days, booked into the mystery school, doing things with a guy called Tirtha, who at the time was Osho's right-hand therapist, after a little while, she turned up. She just turned up at the ranch, and she did groups with me for the next 4 months there with Tirtha and whoever else was running groups at the time. And so that was different. And at that stage, though, it's so funny because Osho was in silence, and we'd sit in satsang in the morning and darshan in the evening for hours on the marble floor. And truthfully, I couldn't feel a great deal. I couldn't feel his presence that strongly. So I didn't really know what people were carrying on about. I just saw him as this amazingly charismatic, intelligent, beautiful man who articulated in a way that I'd fallen in love with. And it wasn't until I went back the following year that I went, whoa, this guy's energy is just so powerful. It's not funny. It was blowing me away. I think the first year I went, my mind was too closed because I hadn't opened up enough yet. As a businessman, I'd closed myself down to operate as a businessman, and somehow I wasn't open enough. And I didn't perceive him, the presence of him. And the next time I saw him, the presence was so profound. And I realized that that is what we're into. We're into that presence. That is the Buddha. It is not the human, it is the Buddha field that is the Buddha. And I realized as human beings, we have the potential to live as that, not just as ego-based beings, but as that.
And what was your experience in Rajneeshpuram?
Well, the first time he was in silence, so it was just business. I just entered the mystery school and did 4 months of mystery school, and it was wonderful. You know, it was lovely to be there. It was very beautiful. It was an oasis in the middle of the desert. Everybody was loving. Everyone was playful. It was a really, really cool place to go. It was just amazing. And the second time I got there was trouble because it was 1985. Sheila had been asked to leave or kicked out of the commune with her 12 or however many people she had with her. Osho is now talking again. He was in charge. The National Guard looked like they were going to come over the hill because there was a threat to, there had been a threat to Antelope, there had been a threat to the state because of what Sheila had been involved in. And so the National Guard were there. There was police officers or military officers in the hall when satsang was occurring and darshan. They were just sitting there watching. And so there was a presence of people. Osho had his armed guards with Uzis all around him. There was a helicopter flying overhead, which was a gunship, basically. The whole place was like a fort because there was this perceived threat from the National Guard that they were going to come in and take over. So it was a very, very different place. Osho was holding satsang morning and night and talking. He was doing the rounds with his Rolls Royce, and you could stand and namaste him as he went round. It was an exciting time to be at the ranch because there was so much peace, yet there was so much tension. It was this contrast of sweet and sour.
And you were a reporter at that time, or you were going there as a press this time? Is
Yes,
that correct?
well, before I came to America to see Osho, I'd had some run-ins with Sheila Silverman. I wasn't happy about those run-ins. It was regards shares in a company called ERG, and I'd gone to America, and I wanted to talk to Osho. I really wanted to. He was my master, and I was his disciple, and I just wanted to talk to him. And I knew that was almost impossible because there would have been 20,000 people there or more. And so I owned a publishing company in Perth, and I owned suburban newspapers. I had been a journalist. So I actually rang up the New York Bulletin in America and told them I was a journalist from Australia at the ranch. Did they want to hire me as a journalist while I was there? They wrote back saying, yes, we will hire you as a journalist, because it looked like the National Guard were coming over, and I had all my cameras with me, and I was ready to go. And so they sent back a note to Rajneesh authorities, press box, saying that I was actually working for them. And I applied then for an interview with Osho and got given 2 interviews with Osho. And I was over the moon. An interview with Osho. Wow. Wow. That was just so fantastic. I had no idea what I was in for. No, I was so arrogant. I had no idea. I'd never sat that close to an awake person. So I had no idea what I was in for.
Yeah, well, we've seen that interview, and it was like, wow. It's like I haven't seen any interview. It was so innocent and beautiful, and you just get lost in translation.
He blew my mind. I sat down and I had 12 questions or 13 questions. I can't remember how many now. And I sit there and I start reading the first question. And all of a sudden, I realized I don't know what I've said before, and I don't know what's coming. I just see that one word, and then I read the next word. My mind had gone into a stopped position, and I'm sitting in front of him, and I asked him the first question, and I'm just blank. His energy field has blown me away. And there's a little bit of fear there. It's like, heck, I'm on camera and I don't know what I'm doing. I really, I'm gone. I'm gone. This guy's got me. All my arrogance disappeared. I was sitting in front of a spiritual master, and I had just realized that enlightenment was very different than anything I had ever understood it to be. There was
Yeah,
something else there.
I was just watching that interview a couple of hours ago as well, just to prepare some questions for this interview. And one of the questions you asked was, were there any enlightened person in Australia?
Yeah. I asked the question, and I think he lied to me, but because the thing about enlightened people is you can't hide them. If someone is awake, they'll have a presence. And because of that presence, it's only a matter of time before people start gathering around them, before seekers start finding them.
Uh, One thing, okay, let me read another Rumi's code. Do not look for me in my tomb, look for me in the heart of every human being. So one of the things that happened after Rajneeshpuram was many Western sannyasis from America, Australia, they left also, or they left the whole spirituality business, or some of them never came back. How did many Australian took it? Because I've also seen the interview from another Australian reporter, Jeff McMullen. Do you know him?
Yes.
And I think Jane Stroke is also from Australia. She wrote the book.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it. No.
Okay. So how was sorry, my question is how do people view Osho now and back then?
Well, Osho was seen as a threat here in Perth, West Australia, because we'd set up a commune down in uh, down south. And the problem with the commune, it was the children of the sannyasins here had been taken away and put down south. And the local town thought that we were taking over the town because there was so many sannyasins down there. And so it caused a lot of controversy here, a lot of friction between sannyasins and the local people. As a matter of fact, at that particular time, which was the early 1985, I actually walked out of a restaurant at 7 o'clock in the evening with my girlfriend, who was also a sannyasin, and another fellow who was a sannyasin. And I was attacked by a gang of bikies in the middle of the main street simply because I was a sannyasin. Um, and this was what was happening. Sheila was going on television and telling people tough titties and upsetting everybody here. And it caused a lot of problems for sannyasins who were living in Perth. So the commune here practically broke up after 1985 and never really got back together at all. Which was a shame, because it had been a very beautiful commune with some 600 people in it. But there was so much resentment and bitterness as to what had gone down. There was a very big split. There was lots of arguments.
Uh, at the
Yep.
at the present, there is a Meblana commune, right? Communal center in Australia.
Yeah, but that's not in Perth. That's on the other coast. That's
Oh, okay.
5,000 kilometers away.
Wow, that's almost like another continent.
Yeah, there's no real commune in Perth anymore. They do have meetings from time to time. They used to have dances and things like that, but not a great deal of activity, really. Not like what was happening in the mid 80s, where it was really thriving. They had their own building, they ran meditations, they ran courses. It was really nice. They had a Zorba the Buddhas, they had a large presence in Fremantle. You'd see orange people everywhere.
Hmm.
And the
Have
parties.
you?
Did I mention the parties?
Yes. About the party, what were you going to say about it?
Well, Osho said, let's celebrate life. And so there was lots of parties. There was lots of celebrating life. It was very liberating to be able to hang out with a group of people who were into celebrating life rather than just being efficient little machines working for $1 trying to survive.
Wow, those parties still exist, this part of the globe.
Ah. I lived in Byron Bay for a few years, and there was a commune happening there. There was quite a lot of sannyasin activity there, but that was quite a while ago now. When I was in Pune in 1989, just before Osho died. Vivek had died. I'd been there for 5 months, I think. I was once again doing groups in Pune with the mystery school, and I could see Osho was on his way out. It was like he was just too gone. It was just so frail, so fragile. You just felt that he was going to go. And when Vivek died, it's kind of like, whoa, that was really, really sad. And then I got quite ill. So I decided to leave and come back to Perth a month before he actually died in Pune. And for me, when he died, it was so sad. It was the end of my opportunity for enlightenment as far as I was concerned. And I gave up on the sannyas organization completely and just did my own thing. But I never let my master go. I practiced my meditations. I practiced self-inquiry. I practiced openness and a way of being in the world that was celebratory and beautiful from then on. So he was in my heart now, but it wasn't external any longer.
Hmm. Vishrant, you call also your spiritual father, and me and my brother were contemplating because this master word I find sometimes very uneasy to say because it corresponds with like master and slave kind of relationship.
Yep.
And I said, like, if Vishrant called him father, we should call our grandfather.
Well, you've got to look at it this way. When I sat in front of Osho in 1985, he germinated something inside of me that grew into something very big. And because of that germination, which someone who's awake can do to other human beings, they can germinate that seed. I see him as my spiritual father because he germinated that seed while I was sitting in front of him. And it grew and it grew and it grew until my whole life was about spirituality, not just about the mundane, making money, having a family, buying a car, getting a house. It had become about enlightenment. It had come about the way of the heart. And so I see him as my spiritual father because he initiated that. And I have so much gratitude to him for that. As far as being a spiritual master is concerned, well, that's what he's referred to. But my understanding of a spiritual master is that of someone who has mastered their own mind. And someone who's mastered their own mind can surrender unconditionally. The mind doesn't keep talking. If they want to use the mind, they can use the mind. If they don't want to use the mind, it stays silent. This is mastery. And so I see that as a spiritual master. I don't see anyone above anyone else. We are all the same. And I think Osho would absolutely agree with that. We're all the same. We're all one. There is no superior. There is no inferior. We are all the same. Just in some people, like Osho, awakening has occurred. That is aware of the mind, aware of the body, that is conscious, has become aware of itself. That's all.
And
Everybody is a Buddha.
around also, a lot of people have also awakened along with him, right? What was your experience living in a commune in Rajishpuram and Pune too? Have you met other awakened sannyasins as well?
No,
met?
No. I met one sannyasin who had been a sannyasin of his that was apparently awake, and he definitely had a strong energy field. And that was in 1989 in Pune. But he wasn't allowed in the commune. He was on the outskirts of the town of Pune, and he lived there, and you could go and visit him and sit with him and talk with him. I went out and saw him and sat with him for 40 minutes. And all he said to me is, the work is being done. And that was it. But I could feel his presence. There was definitely something there. I think that with people waking up, they're not that welcome at Rajneeshpuram. I think they become a threat to the establishment there, because someone who's awake in themselves becomes an authority because they're awake and they know how, otherwise they wouldn't be awake. And so they become an authority because they can then help others wake up. And I think that if someone started waking up or was awake in Rajneeshpuram, I don't think they'd be that popular there.
I think I'm glad you brought this point because I think same thing is happening again. I think the history repeats itself. Even in Pune right now, like a lot of the Osho's very close disciple and intimate sannyasins are banned. I think whole world knows this, but people don't talk much about it. Anyway,
Yeah. Well,
yes.
look at it this way. If you're a seeker, who would you rather sit in front of? Someone who's awake or someone who is still asleep?
Awake,
Indeed.
obviously.
Indeed. And so when you choose to sit in front of someone who's awake, all of a sudden that person has some level of authority. I see that as a threat to Rajneeshpuram. because people who are awake cannot be trusted. They are going to say what they want to say. They are going to do what they want to do. They cannot be trusted to toe the line.
Okay,
Nishant,
let me.
yeah, really quick. One of our viewer from Canada is asking, who was the awakened person that you met in Pune when you were there in 1989?
Yes, he was an Indian man, and I can't remember his name. I'm sorry. That what happened for me that night is I was found because he was about an hour's drive out of Pune, and they found me. Some friends found me that night wandering around the town of Pune, absolutely drunk, and I hadn't had a drink. His energy, his energy field had got me, and it had also blown my mind. But I can't remember his name. I'm
There
sorry.
was someone called Gazer Baba. His whole job was to cut carrots in the ashram.
Ah.
Carrot Baba or Gazer Baba, maybe, or someone else. Yes.
Yeah, I just can't remember. It's like one of the things that happened to me being around Osho and also being around other awake teachers is it just blew my mind. It's like my memory, it's like being taken by aliens. You don't remember anything. There's some kind of, it just blows your mind. And so with this guy, he blew my mind. And I only sat with him for an hour and he only said a few words to me. He said, the work has begun. And the next thing I find myself in town drunk, friends taking me home because I was in such a pitiful state. And what occurred as a result of that particular meeting was a lot of the darkness inside of me started coming out. A lot of the unfinished business, a lot of the vasanas started coming out. The pain body started coming out. It was like a great purging started to begin.
Let me ask you another question, but before that, start with the Rumi's quote again. He who understands this journey should have thousands hard so that he can sacrifice one every moment. In your uh, introduction or biography that I've read, you have mentioned you a lot of one of the things that helped you in your journey was the mystery school and Swami Tirtha. And also, this was in 1987, your near death experience, Lost in the Sea. Can you share some story about that?
Yes, well, I'd seen Osho in 1985 and interviewed him. And in 1987, in February, I went out to sea in a runabout to meet a yacht over at the Abrolhos Islands, which are 35 miles off the coast of West Australia. And in the journey across, a cyclone came in and I got blown out to sea 60 miles and the boat sunk. It got hold. It must have hit something in the water. And the boat sunk down and we were circled by sharks for 18 hours in the water. And at no point during that period did I think we were going to survive. I thought we were actually going to die. But there was a radio on the roof of the boat and the roof of the boat hadn't sunk below water level yet. And so at some point I was able to direct a search and an oil tanker found us at 2:00 in the morning the following day and rescued us. But at no point did I think we were going to survive that. And during that journey, I had looked across at my partner who was also in the water, and she was going to die, and I knew she was going to die. I was going to die, and it was my fault because I'd gone out there and not checked the weather. And I looked across at her, and this amazing unconditional love arose in me. And I'd never experienced it before. It was just so beautiful to feel this unconditional love. And then it went, and we did get rescued, and life went on. But what happened was I went from there to London, and in London, one of my partners noticed that I wasn't doing so well, business partners. And he said, why don't we go and see Tirtha in Italy? Because Tirtha was running a mystery school in Italy at Villa Volpe. And I thought, oh, we'll go and see Tirtha because he's an old friend of mine. I'd done groups with him before in Australia and also at the ranch. And so I went to see him for 3 days, a long weekend, doing a group, some little group he was running. And it was wonderful to see him again. And at the end of the group, he said to me, you know, you've really polished your apple. How about going to the core now? Let's find out what's inside. And it just blew my socks off. And I went, okay. And so I stayed for another 5 months. I never left. I stayed with Tirtha for 5 months. And during that period of time, Tirtha took me apart, piece by piece by piece by piece, because the process of higher consciousness isn't about gaining anything or adding anything. It's about undoing all the programs that keep us prisoner. And through
Vikrant, can I interrupt you here?
Yes.
So before you doing this mystery school with Tirtha, you are doing all the meditation, dynamic, kundalini, all the meditation, but still you have to go through this process.
Yes. Yeah, the meditations are great for purging, like dynamics are great purging meditation, kundalini is a great purging meditation. But the thing is, we can let all this stuff out. We can let all this junk that we've collected out, all this pain body out. But unless we stop producing it, it fills up again. And we produce it with the way we think, our belief systems. And so the work, if there's any work to be done, is undoing the mind, undoing the belief systems that create contraction and pain in us. And any belief system that contracts us because some expectation isn't met is actually in the way of higher consciousness. It's an obstacle. And so all of the mind needs to be undone. And so it can actually just relax, be at peace. Otherwise, even if you wake up, even if you have a satori and awareness finds itself and the mind starts contracting, awareness will pull away from itself and go back to the mind. And then you get this flip-flop effect where you feel, I'm everything without personal. And then you're back to ego. Oh, here I am again. Because there's this flip-flopping effect because the mind is not truly in support of what's been found. It's not in support, as Rumi would say, of the beloved. It hasn't given everything to the beloved yet. And there is no such thing as selfish enlightenment. You can't wake up for you. You have to surrender unconditionally, and there's nothing in it for you. The best deal in town is everything for truth and nothing for you. That's the best deal because it's the only deal. And people don't get that. They go for enlightenment thinking they're going to become enlightened and they might be a teacher and they might become famous or they might do this or that. No, you die. You don't know what's going to happen next. You haven't got a clue. You're now given your life to truth and truth lives your life. It's over for you. You as an I disappear. There's an absence of you, anatta. It's gone. And a lot of people don't get that. And they make the huge mistake of thinking that somehow they can raise their consciousness levels by collecting knowledge. No amount of knowledge ever raised consciousness levels. Only practices raise consciousness levels. Only the practices of acceptance and surrender, the practice of openness, the practice of meditation, the practice of self-inquiry, these all work. Nothing else works, only practice.
Thanks for bringing that out. I think this was the first time I heard somebody mention that because I have seen a lot of people in this path who have meditated for 20, 30, 40 years and still when you meet them, you just feel their ego, like meditative ego, than the like being unconditional and disappearing their I and ego. And there was like you brought that point that nobody get enlightened by collecting knowledge. And where we are from, Nepal, there was also Tapoban, and before it was a Tapoban, it was a forest. And the great scholar and enlightened being from called Nagarjuna have come there to meditate. He was 90-year old. He was a very great scholar before he came there, and all of his students were enlightened. but he was still not enlightened. And he said, like, whole my life was ruined because I'm 90-year-old about to die and nothing happened. So he gave everything, and he come to this forest to meditate. And then story goes that he become enlightened and died.
Okay. Yeah, enlightenment's a funny thing because most of the people seekers are going for enlightenment for themselves, and there's no such thing as selfish enlightenment. The ego doesn't wake up. It can't because it's a dream in the first place. You give your life to truth. You give your life to the beloved. The beloved is truth. You give your life to that and you hold nothing back. You give your totality of yourself as an I to beingness. And then there's a possibility. And then there's a possibility. There's nothing in it for you. As a matter of fact, there's an absence of you. Awakening occurs, there's beingness, and there's no you. No you as an I. And there's no personal you as beingness. It's just beingness. And this is very, very beautiful. It's our true nature. Everyone is that, but people are trying to be that. And the ego can never be that. Not possible. So it collects knowledge, thinking that somehow it can raise its consciousness levels and wake up through the collection of knowledge. Not possible. It's the booby prize. Only practice.
So, what happened after you got back from mystery school? There was this thing that you gave up everything and went 4 years searching for your heart.
Mm.
Can you share the story?
I came back from mystery school after spending 5 months with Tirtha in Italy, and I was doing self-inquiry, Zen style, asking the question, who am I, and answering it while walking on the foreshore near where I lived along the river. And I'd started at 6 in the morning, and it was around about 10 in the morning. I'd been inquiring for about 4 hours, just walking by myself, asking the question, who am I, answering it, and then letting that answer go, and then asking the question again. And at some point, I became the universe. Everything was self. Everything, every particle, every point in the universe was self. And it just, I'd never, ever seen anything like it. It changed everything about me. Everything. I'd been a very successful businessman, and I recognized I did not want to be a businessman anymore. Within weeks of that satori, I walked into my companies, gave my companies to my staff, including the furniture, everything, and walked out broke because I didn't want to be a businessman anymore because I could see clearly it was in the way of my spiritual growth. It was in the way of my heart. I took my shoes off, and for the next 4 years, I walked around Australia in search of my heart as a bum with no money, broke. And during that adventure, walking around Australia, I was shattered by what I saw in myself and what I was able to let go. And I found my heart. I found the beauty of love. And in that beauty, I decided to serve heart. I decided that I would like to serve heart. And in service of heart, I had to find a way to serve heart, because how do you serve heart? The only way is when love is there, you love people and you just want to take care of them. But I didn't really have any skills to take care of people. So I went back to school and trained as a psychotherapist and as a naturopath, so I could have some skills to actually serve and help people. And I saw this as manageable happiness, the way of the heart. And then Osho died in 1990, and I gave up on enlightenment. I just gave up on enlightenment. I thought, I've lost my master. I've lost my chance in this lifetime. But I still practiced the way of the heart, taking care of everybody that I met in some way, trying to lift everyone I met in some way, whether they were family, friends, clients, or people I didn't know. It didn't make any difference. And at the same time, meditating every night, at the same time, self-inquiring, at the same time, practicing openness, which is the way of the heart. Never ever lost my love for my master. He was always with me. Very beautiful, very beautiful.
Here is another Sufi quote. This is a valley of love. In the valley of love, love is represented by fire and reason by smoke. When love comes, reason disappears. So after Osuz left the body, you went and met Punjaji, Papaji,
Yes.
and other Advaita teachers, Nisargadatta Maharaj, Isaac Sapiro, Gangaji, Mataji. Can you share your experience? How did you find and what was the difference? You find no difference?
So it was 8 years later. It was in because Osho died in 1990, and 8 years later, in 1998, the Advaita Vedanta teachers started coming to Perth. And the first one was a guy called Isaac Shapiro. He lived on the East Coast. He was a South African. And I booked tickets to go and see him, booked accommodation down south. It was 400 kilometers south of Perth. And then I watched a video of him doing satsang on stage with his wife. And I looked at it and I went, I really don't think so. But I'd already booked the tickets. So, and my family went with me. We went down to Denmark with our 2 children, and we went to satsang. Satsang was appearing on the first night. He was there for 14 nights. And I was sitting in satsang, kind of like bored, not really wanting to see this guy because I thought that he wasn't any good. And he walked in the back door. He must have been 50 meters away from me. And just the energy field he was carrying took me into Satori immediately. And the thirst and the fire for enlightenment became so strong, I became willing to die for it. And within a year of seeing him and other teachers like Vartman, Gangaji, Shanti Mai, whoever was in town who was carrying a presence, there was 1,000 Satoris. And then one day in 1999, in May, the 30th, I think, after being on retreat for 2 weeks with a man called Vartman, the Satori never stopped. So it's like living in 2 dimensions, out here and in here continuously. Nothing, 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 nobody here. Yet everything as self.
And at this time, you are doing all the thing normally, like doing your job as a therapist, and all this thing was happening in the.
I was a family man. I had 3 children, and I had to take care of 2 families, and run a naturopathy business and a psychotherapy business. And I did that, but I also practiced self-inquiry continuously, meditation, and the practice of openness. Self-inquiry became one of my most important tools at this time of my life because it was taking me into beingness. Asking the question, who am I, Advaita Vedanta style, not answering it, and then finding myself as pure awareness, just looking. And it was a bit like walking around an abyss, looking at the abyss. And I'd walk around the abyss doing self-inquiry, seeing the emptiness, seeing self as emptiness. And then at one point, instead of seeing the emptiness, seeing the abyss, I found I was the abyss. And it's never changed.
Wow.
And people started coming and sitting with me because they could feel the presence. And that's how it all began 21 years ago, holding satsang.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And my intention is really simple. I want everyone to find themselves as truth. Everybody who's a seeker, I want them all to find themselves as truth, because it's the only way to be free from a life of suffering. Because ego-based reality is a life of suffering, constantly desiring things to be different than how they are, constantly being attached to what we have and being frightened of losing it. That leaves. One of the beautiful things about enlightenment is there is no fear anymore. Abhaya, no fear. Gone, gone, gone. Gate, gate, paragate, gone, gone beyond.
Wow. in one of the interview, you said it is important to have a living master, and I also support you. I mean, I also agree with you. But there are a lot of people, a lot of also sannyasis who think that, and even also said it both ways. He said, like, if you love me, even when I'm gone, I'm not gone. I'm still here. But if you, and in another thing, he said, like, when I'm gone, you have to find the living master because the dead master or dead person cannot help kick your ego.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I heard that discourse also where he said, dead masters don't kick ass. And it's true. See, the ego is such a tricky thing. It's a survival mechanism that's over 1 million years old. And unless you're with someone who's going to help you on the way, it's likely the ego will trick you into surviving in the way of helper thoughts or some other thoughts. Everything must be surrendered. And the best way to surrender it is in the Buddha field of a living master, because it supports that surrender. It supports that let go. And so from my perspective, when the Advaita Vedanta teachers came to town, I would spend as much time as I possibly could, as close as I possibly could to them, because I could feel the Buddha field. I could feel what it was doing to my mind. I could feel how it was expanding my reality, my consciousness, opening my heart, opening my crown chakra, opening my third eye. I could feel the presence doing the work. And that really occurs in the presence of someone who's alive and awake. And so even though some of my teachers were a little corrupt in some ways, it didn't matter to me. What mattered to me is the Buddha field they were carrying. In that field, when I tuned in, I could find myself as truth. And to my surprise, after Vartman left Perth, every day for the next week, I woke up and I was the universe, to my surprise, my mind's surprise. It was actually shocked by it. Always here as self, always here as everything, always here as nothing. And the identity, the I identity had dropped. The personal had dropped. The story of Vishrant was gone. About 2 weeks after awakening occurred, my wife, who had only married 6 months before, came to me and said, I have lost my husband. And I said, yes, that's happened. Because it had. But I didn't leave my wife. I didn't leave my children. I stayed. I wasn't going to abandon the responsibilities of the man that used to live here before.
Wow. Wow. So, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. But just to let you know, we also have Swami Champak Anand.
Okay.
He's from the Ranch Time.
Uh-huh.
Champak, he wanted to come, so Champak.
I'm absolutely loving this.
I love your beard.
Oh,
You have a nice beard.
okay.
You'd
I'll
make
do
a
the
great
obligatory
Viking.
Santa Claus, you know. I was listening to your earlier comment where you went to the ranch. Well, before you went to the ranch, your girlfriend, and she split. She ran away. I'm out of here. And then you're at the ranch, and who shows up? Your girlfriend. That's classic Osho, you know, because the group leaders they used to get so excited about the people that used to get up and run out of the groups. Oh yeah, that person's on fire. That person's gotten in touch with something. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
I have never met you before, sir, but I like you already. I love your laugh and I love your beard.
Swami Champak is a great human being. He's a
Oh gosh.
Osho sannyasi from Pune one days,
Yeah.
a wizard. He's a pranic healer and teacher as well. He has
Ah,
learned with Master Choa himself, and
Oh
he
my.
has helped me a lot. He knows a lot about the esoteric
Yeah.
world, and he's very
Yeah.
happy to be here today.
oh,
Oh yeah. Like Osho really prepped me to meet Master Choa. Oh boy. Because when I met Master Choa in 1990, he had just launched this new upgraded version of how to get everything cooking on the planet, you know.
uh-huh.
And so uh, it was like everything that's happened with me with all these great masters and great beings, I get delivered to them. Like I got delivered to Osho Bhagwan in Pune with a bag of money, and my girlfriend went back to Paris to divorce her husband, and so that I could come and marry her. And so she left me there. Here, you stay here. This is a good place. Good food. I'm sitting there going. But anyways, it's a same thing with Master Choa. I got invited to come to a business meeting, uh, and these people are talking about Master Choa, and yeah. Anyways, so but my first day that I met Master Choa, there was four of us staying in this house by ourselves, and him and I, we went out and sat under this tree, and for 2 hours he grilled me about Osho. uh, And during that session, I asked him very directly to please not publicly support Osho. And the reason for that was, even though he loved him and all that kind of stuff, the reason for that was because Osho had been such a radical that so many sannyasins and the whole movement was banned from so many countries that anybody having any kind of association with this movement was already automatically on the list.
Yeah.
And so here comes his next teacher, and it's like, I really didn't want him to be handicapped with this legacy, and he saw it. He got it. So what he did was he went kind of opposite in some aspect of what Osho was doing, because Osho was being political, deliberately political. I mean,
Yeah.
he was putting in uh, Time magazine every fortnight, every 2 weeks, a column. It was like a WikiLeaks whistleblowing thing, but what was going on out there? Like he was really stirring the pot, you know.
Yes.
So that didn't go well with the politicians. so, so, I'm talking to Master Cho about this, and he was like totally getting it. I mean, it wasn't, he had this idea already. I'm not claiming that. So he developed this movement that was non-political and now is in effect in so many countries around the world. And if you dive deep into both of the practices, it's the same story. It's the same message.
Mm.
It's all about you know what you're just talking about. Becoming awakened. It's just a different face, but it's the same original story that these for ages gone past that these master beings have been trying to get us all to wake up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Uh, Swami, thank you, Swami Champak. Dishwant, another question I think I asked was about Swami Tirtha. And with also a lot of people, they have got rid of their ego. And a lot of the sannyasins, they got burned really bad. Can you tell us
Yeah.
some?
Well, in West Australia, a lot of sannyasins got burnt really bad. As a matter of fact, I fell out with the commune here in 1985 because I was asked to collect money by getting sannyasins here to sell their homes and donate it to the Rajneesh organization. Sheila was organizing it. And they put me together with a psychologist and a accountant to do this. I had to think about it overnight and got very angry about it because I thought they were using me to help rip people off. And so I went back the next day and threw my mailer at them and told them they could stick it, basically. And I left the Rajneesh organization for 6 months until I was in a bar looking for a friend, and the barman behind the counter had said, "Yeah, the friend you're looking for, his name's John Cooper, right? He killed himself last week." And I hadn't been wearing my colors or my mala for 6 months, and the impermanence of this man and the impermanence of myself struck me so strongly at that particular time. I decided I wanted my sannyas back. I wanted to be back with Osho. And so I went, I was still with this girl, this woman who I'd taken to the ranch. And I went home and I said, I'm going to go and get my sannyas back. I'm going to go be with Osho again. And she said, I'm out of here. And so she kicked me out of the house. I went and lived on my yacht for 6 months, but that's another story. The whole thing is, I realized that there's only one thing to do here, and that's to wake up. And that Osho was my doorway. He was my doorway. There's nothing else to do here but wake up. There is no other plan that's worth doing. There is nothing else that's worth doing. Wake up, wake up, wake up.
Wake up. Yeah.
And that whole understanding is what drives the thirst to make you do what you need to do to facilitate enlightenment. And if that thirst is not there, well, there's a problem. And so people who are awake are trying to encourage people to be more thirsty. They're shining a light so they can see, they're giving them an example, but they're also trying to encourage people's thirst for truth, because it's only with that thirst for truth that becomes greater than the thirst to have a relationship, to have money, to have survival. It's only when that thirst becomes greater than that that you are truly willing to give yourself to God or truth or whatever you want to call it. And it's in that unconditional giving, that unconditional surrender, that the potential for enlightenment is there.
There is a Sufi saying, don't look for water, be thirsty. And how's your relationship with the organization now?
With
Joyce and Amrita?
I don't have any association with it. I haven't had any association with the Rajneesh organization since I left in 1989, 1990, when Osho died. I haven't gone back. I haven't had anything to do with it whatsoever. But what I have noticed is that the video that, the interview that I did with Osho was actually removed from their library. And as many times as it was put up on the internet over the last 20 years, it was taken down again. Someone was taking it down. The only place I could find it eventually was in Russia. But it's up again now. It's up again now. I had a feeling that someone didn't want the association. But the beauty of that particular video is I shared copyright with Rajneesh organization on that particular video, so I could show it.
Bishram, you said it was taken down more than 20 times?
It was taken down every time it was put up, but I don't truly know by who. Someone took it down.
Yeah. Well, a classic thing that Osho used to, tell us is that the finger pointing at the moon is not the moon. And Krishnamurti, he also said, the observer is not the observed. And so this is what and so then Osho went on to tell us, later, because he was prepping us. He says, after the death of the teacher follows a period of contractions of the teachings, because of the finger pointing at the moon is not the moon. The Rajneesh movement, the organization, that's not Osho. Like Jesus is not a Christian. No. This whole Christianity thing grew out of what, Jesus was here or whatever, and so on and so forth, but it's not him, And so same thing with the Muslim world, like the leader there, he didn't tell the women to wear burqas, and veils and all this kind of stuff. That was added on later by the Old Boys Network, So we're seeing the same thing happen here in with Osho's legacy. There's all this add-on stuff and all this, we get should upon. So yeah, so many of us have just kind of like, okay, we had our time with the master, and the master died, and gosh, you'd like to, maintain contact with the community, but they're kind of shifting, and so I'm gonna carry on and do what it was that that I learned to live when I was living with the master, and so yeah, we grow apart, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's why, like when Vishwant, you said you have to find the living master. If there was no
if you need one,
Swami,
yeah.
yeah, Swami Anandarun in Nepal, we would have got lost in translation because a lot of thing was added on later on.
Yeah. Yeah.
A living master is a dangerous person to be around because their whole intention is to take you apart until there's nothing left.
Yes.
So living masters are dangerous. If you're lucky enough to find one, be prepared for annihilation. Osho used to say, I'm not your dear old uncle. I'm here to murder you.
I wrote him a letter one time. I said, Bhagwan, please chop off my head. and he wrote back, oh, you'll do fine. Something like that.
So I think, thank you, Champak. We are almost coming to an end, and this is the last question from my side. Before asking the question, let me read the last Rumi quotes. Meeting place of two seas where dead fish comes alive. Vishwant, tell me about your Vishwant Buddhist Society. Although it is put on the umbrella of Buddhist Society, I heard that you do a lot of things the Osho style, like giving sannyas and celebration.
Yes, the beauty of creating your own religion is you make your own rules. And so the Vishwant Buddhist Society was created by a group of people here in Perth, and we created our own precepts and our own way of being in the world. And a lot of that was taken from Gautama the Buddha, but also a lot of it was taken from Osho. So we are a very celebratory type of Buddhist who enjoys all the pleasures of life thoroughly and meditates, self-inquires, practices, and attends satsang regularly. So very spiritual in a lot of ways, but very free, not caught in 2,500-year-old dogma. No smells, no bells, just what works. Just what works.
Wow. Oh, good. Wow. Yeah. Keep on trucking. Oh, this is
Suvarna, do you have something?
Brings me to my mind. I was watching your interview a couple of times, the one with Osho, and he was saying about my ashram should be decentralized. People should, have as many communes all over the world. And he also said, I'm coming to Australia. So I think through you, he is there in Australia.
Well, there you go.
Osho is here. There is no difference between the energy of Osho, the energy of Gautama the Buddha, the energy of Ramana, the energy of anybody who's awake. It is always the same. It is no different whatsoever. Osho is here.
That's right. It's all the same group. It's all the same club.
At the end of this meeting, we always added this, like you create your own religion or center or society. We have also created, we have borrowed idea from few different places, and we have found this doing the metta prayer is very helpful. And I'd like to invite you to do the metta prayer.
I was offered that by my assistant here, and I've got to tell you something about prayer, and you may not like what I have to say. I do not find anyone to pray to. We are that. We are God. There is
Okay.
nobody to pray to. We
Yeah.
are that already. Find yourself as truth, and you'll realize there is no one to pray to. All these monks who collect money praying to some entity for people's wishes and collect money off them, it's a con. It's not true. There is nobody to pray to. Gautama the Buddha was a man who woke up. He wasn't a god. Osho was a man who woke up. He wasn't a god. You can't pray to these people. They're dead. You want to pray, there's only one word of prayer. Thank you. Thank you for this life. That's it. So no,
Okay,
I won't do a metta prayer.
Okay.
I will though send you my love because I love you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, the metta prayer is also a gratitude, thankfulness prayer, but you've summarized in one word. Thank you.
Love to you. And I love what you're doing. I love what you're doing. I love your enthusiasm for Osho. I love your spirituality. It brings joy to me. Thank you.
Likewise. It gives us a tremendous pleasure to hear from all the sannyasins and get connected with them.
It's Socrates'
And-
message to the world. You know, Socrates was forced to drink poison hemlock, you know, and because the crime that he was convicted of was poisoning the minds of the youth. Yeah? And what he was doing was he was getting his students to question everything, you know,
Yeah.
and that's what I see that's going on in this ongoing Zoom thing, you know, that you guys are doing. Is you're bringing up all this, you know, all this stuff, you know, for us to look at and question and talk about and think about and uncover and examine. Be your own master, you know. Wow.
Thank you.
Swami Prem Vishrant.
Fucking-
Swami Prem Vishrant and our friends, we want to see you again as soon. This was a very awakening interview and a lot of answers and good questions.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
And
yeah.
I want you to know that I'm open to any challenges as well. The thing about being holier than thou is rubbish. You can ask any question, you can doubt anything, and you must. You must always test the people who are telling you things. They're
Right.
not to be trusted ever. You always question for yourself. You always
Yeah.
find out through your own direct experience. Never take anything that anyone says to you as a belief. All
Yeah.
beliefs are prisons. And so you're welcome to challenge anything that's done or said here. Always.
Yeah, yeah. Otherwise, you're not your own master. You know, we're regulating ourselves to be kind of like subordinate to, you know. And what these great teachers are here to do is to, you know, give us this opportunity to wake up and be our own masters. And so that's what Swami means, is master of self. You know, that's what we're supposed to do. That's what the guy's asking us. Come on, wake up, be your own master.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Wake up.
Thank you.
Wake up.
Wake up.
Wake up.
It's time to sleep here. It's midnight now.
Okay.
I'll go to sleep and wake up tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank
Love you guys. Keep it up.
thank you so much. We want to see you again.